Hello, I'm Anna Carugati, the Group Editorial Director of WorldScreen. Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Cris Abrego. He's the Chairman of Americas at Banijay and President and CEO of Endemol Shine Holdings and recipient of the 2022 Premio Ícono Award. So, Cris, thank you so much for taking time to being with me today.
Anna, thank you so much for having me and recognizing me with this incredible honor. I'm really appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course, my pleasure. So before we look at all the businesses you oversee today, let's take a step back in time. And did you always want to work in television? Was this a dream you always had? And how did you get into the business?
It absolutely, well, it's kind of, yeah, the short answer is yes, that I've always wanted to work in television. The long answer is I didn't know what that meant. And ironically, I grew up in Southern California, probably about 25 miles actually from Hollywood, if you will, and didn't have any understanding or idea of how to get started in this business, or if it was even a career potential. I didn't know anyone who even knew anyone in this industry. But what I did know was that I loved watching television and I loved being a storyteller in terms of writing, coming up with ideas and talking. And when I realized, I was fortunate enough in my high school, they actually did have a television production course. And when I realized that was something that I could actually create content, I was hooked. And again, not knowing what it meant to work in this industry, not till later, till college, but I knew this is what I wanted to do. And to be quite honest, this is the only job I've ever had.
That's great. So let's jump ahead. So you got into the business, and what was your first job?
My very first job, believe it or not, because I couldn't get hired here in LA. And I back in, because I'm old enough, where you actually had to print out your resume and deliver it or fax it, if you will. Geez, I haven't heard that word in a while. But I was handing out my resume here in LA, like the newspaper daily, and wasn't able to find anything. And ultimately I found a job part-time editing sports highlights for an NBC affiliate in Palm Springs, KMIR, and that's where I started. Then ultimately worked my way back to LA, where I was ultimately landed, of all places. My very first job in LA was at Buena Murray.
Then let's jump ahead a little bit. Tell us about the surreal life and the opportunities you saw. I mean, you're credited with pioneering celebrity reality programming. So tell us about that.
Well, I appreciate that, but I don't know if I'm sure there's others too, but the surreal life was an incredible opportunity and timing, meaning that obviously being a part of Buena Murray and being able to learn from John and Mary Alice, which was incredible, and doing the Real World and Road Rules at the time. And then the whole genre of unscripted television was just really starting to blossom. And then competition formats really started to take the lead in that space, like Survivor and Amazing Race and others. And I've always been a huge fan of comedy. And that was an area that I don't think unscripted was headed in. And so we saw kind of a white space, if you will, into thinking, how could we do some reality comedy? And of course, we thought at the time the genre was maturing enough, and it was all about real people. But hey, we thought actors, celebrities, they're real people, and so we thought about foraying into that space, and we put it together, and it was an incredible pitch that was really fun to give to buyers, and nobody bought it until finally one time at the WB, believe it or not, because people forget it wasn't always on VH1. It started at the WB. Where the executives at the WB said, if you can cast it, we'll do it. And so we went to work and casted it. And then, as they say, the rest was history.
And that led you to setting up your own company, 51 Minds Entertainment, which you then sold to Endemol Shine. Correct me if I'm wrong, in 2008?
No, that's about right. And in that time, unscripted television is always not considered a staple of this industry, but it was really growing. And what people didn't really realize was very quietly, these unscripted companies were growing and having a lot of success, and mainly on cable, but we had started to cross into prime time and broadcast, and we're really driving a lot of ratings. And so I think a lot of companies started to realize and look at the value of an unscripted production company. And sure, yeah, Endemol at the time came knocking on our door right around 2007, and we explored it, ended up closing a deal for an acquisition in March of 2008, which was pretty extraordinary when you talk about timing, because if you recall, where the country would happen there in April, May after that in 2008, it was pretty bad, but they've been able to close a pretty good deal, and it was a successful partnership with Endemol.
And that grew, didn't it? Because you were appointed co-CEO of Endemol Shine North America in 2014, and then given oversight of the group's companies in Latin America in 2016. So during those years, I imagine the learning curve continued, right? It wasn't just how to get into the business and everything you learned at that up to then, but after, what did you learn about production and satisfying channels' needs?
Well, it's a great question. One, I think, because if you know me and you know my history, I don't have a traditional corporate background, right? So I was never, I didn't set out to run a business, let alone in international business. But so I stepped into some pretty big, shoes to fill, and in terms of Latin America, it wasn't so much that it was handed over those territories. I wanted to be in business in those territories. I grew up in a bilingual household, and so it depended on who I spent time with. If I was with my dad, I was watching Hill Street Blues and all those great shows. If it was my mom, it was Marimar or Muchachitas, and it was an area that I really saw as opportunity to start creating Spanish content. And not just in the U.S., but also just in Mexico, and then ultimately, of course, Brazil. And that was one of the reasons why I took the job. But to your specific question, what did I learn? And I learned that no matter the scale of the business or the territory, the one constant, I learned a lot of things, but if I had when I think about one big theme, is that it really still doesn't, it comes down to who is making the show, the execution of the project. Who's developing it? It's still about the creatives, about that entrepreneurial kind of person. Even in the role I'm in now, which is supporting these creators, it's even when we pitch something or sell something, it still comes down to who's actually making it and who's telling that story and what is that story. And so I realized that no matter how big, we've going from 51 Minds to Endemol, the Endemol Shine to now Banijay, that ultimately it still runs on the exact same gas, which is ideas and great people.
And as you mentioned in your book, which I'll get to in a second, the execution is everything, right?
Everything.
Yeah.
It's still very much like, who's the boots on the ground, and the person, who's executing this vision for the project. It really makes a difference. And that's why I really am honored to be working with some of the top people in this business.
You mentioned Banijay. In 2020, Banijay acquired Endemol Shine, and you were appointed to your current position, which, as I said, is chairman of Americas for Banijay and president and CEO of Endemol Shine Holdings. You oversee, I think, 9 studio labels?
Nine labels across the U.S., Mexico, and Brazil.
One of them is Buena Murray, right? So where you started. So that's an interesting example of life coming around full circle. Tell us about the company today, and somebody is leading it that you used to work with, right?
It is obviously an irony of all things, and coming full circle. And I was very fortunate. John Murray, who I have a very close relationship with, and is an incredible mentor of mine, and of course the late Mary Alice Bunham. Look, a lot has changed in the over 20 years since I've been there, but not with a lot of the principles that Mary Alice and John bestowed on a lot of us who were there, which was a work ethic, commitment to excellence and pursuing it, and storytelling. Those were things that were critical to Buena Murray's success in its beginnings, with the real world, and continue to be why it's one of the top companies around today. While I was there, right as we crossed paths for a short time, was Julie Peasy, who's an incredible producer at her core, which is what I love. And then so it became actually somewhat of an easy decision to appoint her the head of Buena Murray. She's an incredible leader who leads from the front and by example. Like I said, she's a producer, a great storyteller, and it was an easy choice to put her in that role. And in this short amount of time that she's been leading the company, it's already showing a lot of great success on top of what the success they were already having.
Right. And many of the companies, let's look at English language for a second, are having successful runs
Oh, yeah.
despite the challenges that COVID is presenting. Just mention some of the shows that your staple of English language production companies are putting out.
Yeah, this, and I appreciate you saying that. Like, what did it say? How's bragging camp going? But it's like it's good because I really give credit to these guys like Steven and Weinstock and Glenda Hirsch at Truly Original, and Christian Sarabia at 51 Minds, and Julie, who we just talked about, and all the teams, Alejandro. They really truly, with all the obstacles in the last 2 years, we went from just survival mode at the beginning of this pandemic to figuring out how to pivot and then to start thriving. And they found a way. Sharon Levy, who heads up television for us, has just had an incredible year last year in selling new projects, new formats. And so, for example, Lego Masters, it continues to do really well for Fox, which we're excited about, and it's coming back for a third season. Below Deck, which 51 Minds does, has been incredibly successful and continues to for Bravo. Of course, the Housewives that Truly Original is doing, MasterChef in Big Brother, which Fly on the Wall, Allison and Rich, who are the showrunners, do so incredible job. Yeah, from Quién es la Máscara in Mexico, which is Masked Singer, continues to do really well. And then Brazil has really, they were one of the countries hit incredibly hard by the pandemic, and the resilience of that team, led by Nani Freitas, or Adrian, we call her Nani. They continue to really thrive in their business. So a lot of shows, franchises continuing to do well, new formats being sold, and the group is really, really doing well.
Excellent. And tell us a little bit more about the production companies in Latin America producing for Mexico, Brazil, and the U.S. Hispanic
Correct.
market.
Yeah, we're really excited. It was an area that I was obviously close to. My mom's from Mexico, and most of my family is, and so it's a territory, country that I'm very familiar with, and being bicultural and of that descent, and so I was really lucky to connect with Alejandro Rincon, who heads up Endemol Boomdog, because again, it comes back to who's running the business or who's telling the story, and he's someone who's has incredible vision, a work ethic, and so it was a small company that we started to do some work with. We started to share some formats with him, and we kind of, if you will, dated, if you will, initially on a couple of projects, and just saw what a professional company they were with best practices and pursuing excellence. So then it grew, and then we formalized our relationship, and they've gone on to be one of Mexico's top independent production companies. Like I said, doing Quién es la Máscara, Mira Quien Baila, and of course our most recent big hit success last summer with Telemundo, La Casa de los Famosos, which we're really excited about and done. And one of the things that those in Latin America, Mexico and Brazil, which I mentioned, is doing different, is we've been able to try to really push into having an equal balance of scripted also. So they're really pushing in that direction with a few big projects that are coming up. We also, because the territory is growing so fast, we saw an opportunity to expand that, really because behind talent. And so we announced recently that we were starting a new label in Mexico, Banijay Americas and U.S. Hispanic, which is being led by Marie Legozamo. And she's based in Mexico City and here in LA. And she was a producer with a huge successful track record who had been working with us for a long time. And we just saw the opportunity for her to scale her business, therefore giving her kind of her own imprint, if you will. And we're super excited about the future for her, with lots to come. She's currently doing LOL for Amazon, which is with Eugenio Derbez, and doing really well. So we're really excited about the business we're doing in Mexico. Moving further south into Brazil, it's been an incredible story. in terms of building that business up. And obviously, it goes without saying that these territories are having so much success in growth because this is where the streamers are focused. Netflix and Amazon and HBO Max and Disney's Plus presence in Mexico is massive, and the same in Brazil. So in Brazil, being led by our CEO there, our newly appointed CEO, I should say, Adrian, we call her Nani Frietas, and the entire team, Sao Paulo, they're really having a lot of success and had a big year last year, and doing, one of the go-to producers for Global, who we do Big Brother for, and The Wall, and many others, and then many shows with Amazon, and like Love Is Blind and others, and of course with Netflix, and then of course Amazon. And if I'm continuing with my brag camp, Brazil, Endemol Brazil, just before the end of the year, was awarded Brazil's top media industry honor, which is a Cabora Award, and they were named Brazil's top media company. So
Excellent.
a lot happening.
A lot. Yes, absolutely.
Sorry.
Now, historically, the U.S. Hispanic market was served by two dominant players, and now some of your companies are producing for that audience. What opportunities do you see there?
A lot. I think it's a demographic that was underserved in terms of premium content. And obviously Telemundo and Univision here in the U.S. Doing phenomenal jobs. And even more so that as it's become competitive, they've stepped up. And so we're very lucky to consider them as our partners. But much like these streamers, the direct to consumers who are also focused on Spanish, it's almost like, this industry has become somewhat borderless and become more language focused. So it's just about English. It's about Spanish, like La Casa de Papel comes from Spain. So it's been a lot of opportunity. And again, this kind of actually goes back to a lot of what I'm doing in terms of more inclusion and diversity, how it's good for business. We're getting an opportunity to tell all these great new stories, which is exciting.
Tell us a little bit more about your commitment to diversity and inclusion. That's been quite important for you, hasn't it?
Extremely. I mean, obviously, because I live it, and then it's a story that's close to me and how hard it was to get into this industry. Right. People in our business talk a lot of, on television, the top honor is winning an Emmy and how difficult it is to win an Emmy, in a sense. But I always say, what's harder than that is getting access to this industry. And especially if you're from an underserved community. And so it is important to me, and it has been a big part of what I've been doing, not just in the position that I sit in today, but all the while I've made sure to bring others along into this industry. And so, yeah, it's incredibly important to me.
You have also spearheaded several initiatives to help young people. First, by establishing a scholarship fund at your alma mater, Mountain View High School in El Monte, California. Why was that important for you? And there's a family member that is taking care of that for you?
Yeah, I think my mom is. I grew up in a household, with parents who were immigrants, and they obviously saw they impressed on us the importance of education as a way of bettering ourselves as they did. And they did, and they went on to, my dad has a doctorate degree and my mom's master's, and the education was something prominent in our household. And so you hear that all the time, you want in these underserved communities like Almani, where I'm from, and the high school that I went to, that you really want to find these young folks to get into college, but at the same time, you also want them to explore other industries than the traditional kind of industry. And so we saw an opportunity to create a scholarship for student athletes out of my high school that we would pay for their college, for their four-year university. And it was, to your point, it's only supposed to be one female, one male, one female every year. But as the years went on, we found these great candidates. My mom couldn't decide. And so what did she tell me? She said, mijo, if you got to go with 3 this year or 4 this year. And I'm like, Mom, we're only doing 2. And she's like, well, I'll pay for the other 2, but with your money. So, either way, you're paying for it. So needless to say, we had well over 20 kids now at this point. Incredible. And I'll tell you, they're so amazing because they have so much grit and resilience, and they've overcome so many obstacles. So when given not a handout, but like a hand up, they've gone on. We have one who's getting her doctorate degree now at USC. And they're just so impressive. And what I realized, it was sure the financial part of it was great, but what really became the difference, and I think in the last, since we've started this program, has been the mentorship and the access to discussing or this industry or other jobs has been incredibly valuable.
More recently, you were elected chairman of the Television Academy Foundation, and you're setting up the foundation's unscripted diversity internship program with leaders from across the reality television industry. Tell us about that. That's also really important.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And look, by the way, that gets back to John Murray.
Right.
I have to credit John, who came to me because John, who was very familiar with my story, and he wanted to, and he had his involvement with the Academy, wanted to really see how we could bring more diversity to unscripted specifically. And so he approached me about starting an endowment, so we could start an internship program with the Academy. And so we brought others in. We raised self kind of funded, but of course with the Academy's help, and myself and Jim Berger from High Noon, Stephanie and Raj Stredikovich from 44 Blue. We all came together and created this endowment, and then more so created this educational program for these interns who want to specifically be in the unscripted space. And we did a pilot program for a year that then went live, and we've been having a tremendous amount of success with it in terms of those internships turning into employment, which I think is a key to create impact.
I'm going to ask you in a second about your management style, but first I'd like to refer to your book, how you had time to write a book with everything that you have to do puts me to shame. But anyway, you wrote a book, Make It Reality, which came out in 2016. And I related to so much of what you wrote, despite the fact that we come from different backgrounds. But I'd like to start by saying I think we were both blessed with formidable parents
100%.
who instilled that a mix of loving affection and no nonsense or no BS, right?
Exactly.
And when you mentioned the education aspect, I so remember, like, if I would struggle, and math was never my thing, and I would struggle and bring home a B+ and I would brag about it, and then a B+. Are you crazy? Why wasn't it an A? And so then you study some more and you reach an A- and you brag about that, and I go, A-? Well, obviously you didn't study enough because it could have been an A. So
you have it even more than my parents. I think they were happy that we were pursuing education and higher. And it's funny because I think my wife sounds like more in your household. It was like, gotta get those A's. What is it? My wife said, she pushes our kids for those, like your parents. And she said, I've never gotten a B in my entire educational career. And I said to her, you know what's funny? I've never gotten a B either. Yet here we are. So no, it is obviously important, but I think it just, even at any level, just kind of an education. By the way, even workforce training. This is an industry that doesn't require any certifications, but it does require a talent and a skill set. And so it's, although I do focus on a lot of universities because I think it gives a maturity level and that education, but I'm open to all levels of any trade schools, junior college.
Absolutely.
Just getting good at your craft.
Right. And I also related to all of your favorite shows when you were growing up. I shared, the Carol Burnett Show, The Jeffersons, Cheers, Hill Street Blues. But anyway, you also
I keep my Norman Lear picture up here.
Yeah.
I mean, those shows were so impactful to me. It were the closest, watching Good Times or The Jeffersons, and they were already in repeats when I was watching them. You imagine that when I was watching them in the mid 80s, they still had that kind of impact on me because they looked familiar to me.
Yeah.
They were the closest thing to reality, of my reality where I was living.
Exactly.
That's what that looked like. When I watched the other shows, I didn't relate. One of, Dynasty or Dallas, those shows didn't resonate with me to the extent like a Norman Lear show.
But in your book, you also talked about seeing past the end of your street, and that really resonated with me. And the importance of vision and drawing on lessons that you learned from family. And let me quote a sentence that stuck with me. Vision is essential to leadership, for motivating yourself and others, and for seeing the big picture rather than getting stuck in the current view. So, making sense of the present, seeing into the future by learning from the past. That is a way of getting into your management style. So, how would you describe it? How have you learned lessons from your past in how you motivate people today?
Well, look, that line is important. And I think it's because, look, when you come from a community like myself, where you're living in multi-generational households, people, I grew up where my friends were living with their parents and their grandparents. So to think that they were going to just assume their parents' role and then, their parents with grandparents, that cycles, you would never go anywhere, was the norm. And so I really, vision to me was everything. To truly be able to see what others weren't looking at was a big part of my leadership style. But the work in that leadership became getting others to come along with that vision, even if they weren't seeing it. And so what I would, again, I think, I don't know, I'm not about my leadership, my management style, but if I had to, say one thing would be that I would, lead from the front and lead by example. I'm in this job, as a chairman, as a CEO, but I never take off my producer cap. It's still one of my favorite parts of this job is being in development meetings, or when I do get to participate in a pitch. And I still love these stories, and I still love watching television. And so I think my management style shifted from being the person who was leading on these sets and trying to get a group of people to execute my vision, to now being the person who supports these incredibly talented people. So like Sharon Levy, to support her vision for her ideas and what she wants to develop and sell, to support, Christian Sarabia and Julie Peasy and Glenn and Stephen and their ideas for content. And from my role, from either bringing more international formats to the table for them, or figure out finance, but making it a safe environment for them to take these risks. That is where my shift and my management style has shifted to.
And looking at what perhaps other people can't see, as you look ahead 12 to 24 months, what opportunities do you see ahead for the companies that you lead and the creatives that you lead?
Many, which is really exciting. You simply have to look at, I think I'm really excited because we have such a diverse group, and such a diverse group of storytellers and creators and makers. So therefore we really get to participate in all the different stories. We mentioned a little bit about diversity, but it's not a charitable cause. It's not just to do it because it's the right thing. It's good for business. That we, think about all the different consumers out there that we want to reach. Well, we're doing that because we're telling all these different stories. And so when you look at the numbers of what's being spent on content in the years to come, I forgot what it is now. It's in like the 20, 30 billion between all the organizations. It's an exciting time. And, Banijay, our group, couldn't be more poised to take advantage of that. And not just from a business aspect, but from a position to really tell these great stories. And so I'm excited for our group. And by the way, and again, I don't take the credit for this because these guys, each person or team that has led each of the labels has had to be a strong leader in themselves to manage through this pandemic and to continue to work. And they've been thriving.
Well, listen, Cris, in recognition of your contributions to the Latin American and U.S. Hispanic media markets, TV Latina World Screen, in collaboration with NATPE, would like to present you with the Premio Ícono. Congratulations, which I believe in these, yes, there it is.
Well, one, it's a beautiful, beautiful award. And so you guys have done a great job with that. So I'm going to proudly display this on my shelf here. But honestly, just it's an incredible honor, Ana, and for you guys to think of me and TV Latina and NATPE. And I obviously wish we were doing this in person, but this is an incredibly badge of honor to be recognized for this, because this work is incredibly personal to me. And I appreciate all of you and for even considering me and adding me to this list. And so with that, I say huge gracias, un gran honor a todos. Again, just really humbled and thank you.
It was well deserved. Thank you very much. Now, because you don't have enough on your plate, I'm going to push you to update the book.
I will.
This is great. I imagine there are a lot more stories that can go in there, and a lot of people can learn from it. Okay, so if you don't have that on your to-do list, you can.
I will. Thank you, and I really appreciate it.
Cris, thank you. Congratulations again. Excellent, and thank you all for watching. Thank you very much.
Thank you.